I was just wondering, have you been called out to many events where farmers or someone has tried to support um, their animal themselves and have created more harm than good? And if so, what is the common thing that people do which are wrong?
That's a great question, Rebecca. Thank you for that. Yes. And generally, the thing that has been the deciding factor of sitting on that fence is time. So, generally, someone has had a go, but they've had a go for so long that the tissues are very bruised and traumatized. So, they start swelling. The vaginal tissues, once you've stuck your hand in and manipulated, they start swelling. And it makes the hole even smaller. The other thing is that it's happened over hours, and at that point the cervix starts clamping down as well. So usually that's been my biggest issue, is that it's been so long, everything starts contracting down, and I've got a lot of trauma that I'm dealing with after that as they've tried to get the baby out. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that as the most common. A couple of other things that I think are worth mentioning is I have seen, unfortunately, a number of torn um, situations where her uterus has torn because people have been a little bit rough. When you are manipulating the feet in there, our little baby ruminants do have these soft little slippers on them, which anyone who's seen one be born is probably well aware of. They're quite cute, and that might confuse you as to what you're feeling. So they kind of feel like jelly, like little jelly toes, and that is a natural way of protecting the uterus while it's moving around and getting into the birth canal and on its way out. But if you go in there with your hands, even just with little hands, if you're manipulating them, say it's upside down and you're trying to get it around to the normal way, just make sure that you cup. That's one of the big things that we do. If this is its little toes, you want to cup its little toe, and as you're moving it, bending its leg, just always really protecting it there. So we do see tearing. Once you've got a tear, depending on where it is, it might be game over or it might not. I'm talking about in the uterine lining. That's something. The other thing that we see, unfortunately, this is probably one of the most common for me, is damage to the lambs from pulling too hard. So you can definitely cause trauma to the mum. You can also cause trauma to the legs of the little one. And so they might end up with damaged front legs. They can't stand. And so that's quite sad. And I feel like in my experience, that's often people who have dealt with dairy cows, and cows, just because of their size, you need to put a little bit more weight into it. But as Christy said, with your lambs, you really don't. They're much smaller. Cows usually only have one big calf. Our lambs are often, as usually for our national flock, we're looking at twins as kind of the average these days, but even triplets. And so they're very little. They should come easily. If you have to pull hard, don't be doing it. You're just going to snap someone's legs. Not really, but you do damage to the tendons and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's where having that timer is really helpful. So once you have started, put your timer on. And if you've made no progress within 10 minutes, that's when I would start calling for help. Kate brought up a really good thing of, what happens if you're very rural or it's a really busy, everybody's out cabbing and no one can help you. There are certain things. This is kind of why I've given step by step of how to do things. You might not always need to go to this level, but if you have no backup, or you do need assistance, that's how we can help. And it's always a good idea of telling your person who is coming to back up that you have been, what you've tried to do already. That can sometimes help them of maybe making the decision, okay, we're going to go straight to a cesarean rather than manipulate around.